Hi, everybody. Welcome to another interview with the founders that are going through Paralect's first batch of the boot camp. I'm here today with Chris and Joe from Myne. Hi, guys. How you doing?
Hey, all good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, really good. Good to meet you as well, John. Thanks for having us today.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited about the idea of Myne, and we'll get into why in a little bit. But to start off with, can one of you just give me a one-line sort of elevator pitch to the idea?
Yeah, so the idea for Myne is basically it's a platform where we aim to make property investing more accessible by allowing users to kind of pool their money and buy a single property. And we'll typically kind of focus on short-term rental properties.
Okay, and what was the inspiration for the idea? And the second part of that question is, why is it a good time now in 2023 to build it?
Chris, you want to take the first part of that question?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. So yeah, the kind of idea came from, so a while ago I had a flat, we were in the process of selling our flat, and we couldn't, it sold and then it fell through, and then kind of COVID happened. So for one reason or another, we decided to keep it. We were able to move to a house we were buying, but we had this flat kind of sitting there and we couldn't get rid of it at the time. So that's when we kind of looked into Airbnb as a potential option for us. So we put it on there, and it was kind of one of those things where we didn't really expect it to go anywhere. We were like, we live in like kind of quite a little town just outside of Cardiff, so there's, and I grew up here, so it was kind of like, I don't think anyone would want to stay here, but I'll give it a go. And to our surprise, it was we were booked flat out after putting it on. And so then we kind of went through the process of kept doing it, trying to improve our ratings and make it a better experience for people by kind of, being better hosts. And it was a really cool process. I really enjoyed it, got a lot from it. And it actually was quite profitable. Because there's less wear and tear on the property, like normal rentals. People don't come to an Airbnb to stay in the apartment the whole time. Typically, they kind of want to go out and explore the area. And also they pay a lot more for a weekend away than they typically would a nightly rate for the place that they live in, kind of thing. So it was amazing opportunity. And it's something we had to sell the flat, unfortunately. But then I've realized from that experience it's quite difficult it's a great investment, but it's very difficult to kind of get into that unless you have the upfront capital and the time to manage the property. It's difficult. And this is where then the idea came from, that there's a bit of a gap here that potentially we could fill. Joe, do you want to take the second part?
Yeah. Why now?
So I guess the why now, always quite a hard question to answer, but one of the kind of main factors and trends we've kind of seen shifting is the rise in the number of retail investors. So if you look at the kind of data from the last 10 years about the kind of total number of equities traded, so 10 years ago in 2011, it was about 11%, but now retail investors make up about 25% of the total number of stocks and shares traded. So really, I think it kind of just goes down to show that the everyday person is becoming more financially literate and looking to effectively invest their money in different options. Obviously, stocks and shares being one of those, cryptocurrencies and commodities being others. But really, the access and the ability to invest in property has a really high barrier to entry. A deposit alone could be in the thousands of pounds. So that's kind of why I think now is the right time to look at building Myne and democratizing the access to investing in properties, and obviously starting in the UK.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. I guess since this is the first co-founding team that we have, that I've interviewed so far in these interviews, how did you guys meet? Can you share a little bit of background, and how did you decide to sort of work together on Myne?
Yeah, sure. So it's quite a good story, actually, I think. So I kind of had this idea, no real experience of the startup industry. My background's in design. So I was kind of all up for kind of creating some mock-ups and that kind of thing. But then it was like, okay, where do I go with this now? So I actually came across another accelerator program last year and applied. And the first person I spoke to actually was Joe. And so kind of went onto that program. Unfortunately, that didn't go anywhere to do with the timing. Then a few months after that, kind of we kept in touch. And originally, it was kind of Joe was helping me out, giving me advice and being the sounding board. And then, a few months ago, we kind of decided to team up on this.
Worked with Chris on this idea for a number of months. Always been that kind of sounding board, kind of providing more general advice. But it was always one that I enjoyed the most and found the most interesting, and you could kind of see myself working on it potentially in the future. And it kind of just happened that everything kind of aligned at the perfect time. And then Chris and I just kind of decided to formally move forward with this, and then hence we came on the Paralect Bootcamp.
All right. Speaking of the bootcamp, I guess, how do you think that it will help you to push the idea forward? Are there any specific things that you're hoping to learn in the process or get out of the program itself?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think it's lots of things that we really do want to get out of this. But really it's to validate the foundations of the idea and actually prove that we feel the problem, and a number of other people that we've spoken to feel the problem about the ability to invest in property is difficult. It's got a really high barrier to entry. We want to start testing some different solutions and some different concepts with the people that we've started speaking to really prove that this idea has legs and can go further.
And I think one of the other important things is to kind of build that list, because it's kind of a bit of a chicken and egg problem with our product. Is we need people and investors to ideally go out and purchase the first property. But then before we have the first property, people might be less kind of willing to invest before that. So it's about kind of building these relationships early on, building a list of people that when we're ready to and we're in a good place, then we can kind of take their investment and then make a purchase with it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting space. And I guess I'm curious if you guys have any ideas around this. Like, this seems like something that would make sense for Airbnb to create within their own platform, or to create in-house and sort of add in as a feature. So in that vein, are there any other existing solutions that you've looked at on the market?
Like, I guess maybe it makes sense for Airbnb to put a feature like this in, but they've got such a strong value proposition themselves in just taking the commissions from the rentals that there's almost no need to venture down the ownership route. So I think that's probably the main reason why Airbnb haven't ventured down this route. In terms of other ways of investing, people can own timeshares, for example, and timeshares are great if you want to have access to the property. But the kind of main feature, the main benefit of Myne is not the access to the property, but it's the rental income and the growth in the equity, that you would see over the course of a number of years in that property as well. So timeshares are great that you get access to the property, but you don't get the rental income, whereas Myne will allow people to get the rental income. So it's more of a financial product than something that you would use to holiday in or take a vacation or something.
And there are other platforms that do a similar thing, so that you can invest in like a normal residential apartment block, for example, and you'll get rental income from that. But like from kind of our experience and having an Airbnb before, you don't make as much. People tend to pay more for their short-term rentals than they do their rent on a per nightly basis. So it's just kind of a bit of an untapped asset that's kind of a lot more profitable. And obviously it depends on like location. It's not every Airbnb is going to be the same, and that's where our expertise as well of, you know, making sure we're investing in the right places that will be profitable locations. That's where they'll come to add value to the end user as well.
Yeah, it's a really interesting market, and it sort of seems to change a lot. You know, Airbnb used to be very popular. Now it's sort of getting a bit of flack kind of from all sides. People are saying that the fees are so high, you know, that the fees that they add on. Neighborhoods are saying, you know, this is negatively impacting sort of the community we have here, just because everything is turned into short-term rentals that's driving up rental prices sort of across communities. What trends do you see there, and how do you think that Myne can sort of navigate this? Although it's kind of a touchy subject in terms of community and housing.
Yeah, well, I guess, you know, Airbnb is maybe taking a bit of the flack, but we're not necessarily only going to be putting these properties on Airbnb. You know, it's about the kind of short-term rental market rather than Airbnb's market. Of course, they own a big share of that market, so of course it would be used. But the great thing about Airbnb is that it allows investment into areas which generally wouldn't see tourism. You know, if you've got family in a certain area, there's not always a big hotel nearby, but there quite often is an Airbnb nearby. So it can really boost the kind of tourism and industry of areas that haven't seen it particularly as much in the past, where hotels may have put themselves. So I guess with everything, there's positives and negatives. So it's kind of weighing up that act.
And look, I also think, just to add to that, I think we're going to see a trend in, there's going to be a lot more people coming onto the platform and putting their own properties on there. I mean, we're in a cost of living crisis now. People are looking for other ways to make income, and this means that, you know, your spare bedroom that you're not using anymore could actually be a source for income for you. So I do think we're going to see a trend of more people go to the platform, maybe single rooms rather than entire properties. But I think that will kind of, I can't see it going anywhere anytime soon, put it that way.
Yeah, it's an interesting space for sure. And my wife and I used to be super hosts when we lived in Arizona. We lived in Flagstaff, which is quite close to the Grand Canyon. So we did a similar thing. We just this was back in early days before it was super popular. Took some crappy cell phone pictures, immediately got booked, and basically were booked straight through for a couple years. It was quite
nice.
fun and challenging at the same time. But it's an interesting experience for sure. All right, let's get back to the boot camp though. One of our core tenets in the program is to have founders build their traction and build out their idea in public. How do you guys think about that approach? And did it excite you? Did it make you nervous? How do you feel?
Personally, you know, it's exciting. We're coming on to an accelerator program. I've delivered numerous accelerator programs in the past before. I've never been on the receiving end of that. So my first time coming out into one of these accelerators as a customer, shall we say, it's really exciting. And, you know, I've learned a lot about how I've delivered them in the past compared to how I'm receiving it now. So yeah, it's great. And the building in public part, you know, there's always an element of nervousness when you're going live with your idea that you've kind of been sat on mulling over in your own head for so long. You know, I think it's brilliant, but by going public, it really allows you to get open and honest feedback from people that you wouldn't necessarily get that feedback from. So while it definitely has its challenges, I think it's, you know, really, really worth it, and it can massively benefit you as a startup founder.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think the kind of building in public piece is kind of a bit of accountability that you need to kind of stick with any kind of project. I think that's kind of where I was struggling when it was just me and I had an idea kind of thing. Whereas so then working with Joe, it was that kind of accountability to another person that I needed. Same then with the boot camp now, you have an accountability to others. And then when you kind of go public with it and you start telling people about it, you kind of don't want it to just be one thing I posted once and then everyone's like, oh yeah, here he goes again. It's got to be something that I got to, walk the walk,
All right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess just to wrap up, I'd like to share the page that you guys made on Momentum, or at least a part of it, and get a little bit of feedback on that and sort of show people what they can expect. So here I've just scrolled down to the benefits of Myne, and you've got browse, invest, and earn there. What was your experience like just making this simple landing page? And yeah, what do you think of Momentum?
Yeah, I think it's a really great product. It's kind of something I've been looking for before this. It's just something where you can kind of put the information in, the kind of formats in place. You haven't got to, be guessing about what should be in what area. It was super easy to kind of use. Really impressed with it.
Awesome. All right. Well, people can check that out. I'll drop the link to the page itself in the show notes. So that's all the questions I have for today. I look forward to talking with both of you guys later during the program. We plan to do like 2 more interviews. So good luck in the second